we're back. We're prepared. We're healthy-ish. And we'll try not to disappoint you like the rest of the teams in the state of Ohio. Next week's the winter meetings, and the Guardians have a lot of work to do, which means we have a lot to talk about this week and next week on Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I am one of your hosts, Jeff. Over there is Justin, and we are about as active on Thanksgiving as the Guardians themselves were over these past few days. Not a great day in the state, or great, I should say, week in the state of Ohio. But one can make a case, the Guardians are doing relatively well in the grand scheme compared to where everyone else kind of is right now.
Possibly. Before we get going, let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Our teams don't win. Let's just be honest. And your team can win if you use FanDuel. Bet on something else besides Ohio sports.
So, trying to avoid the coughing on a myriad of things right now, and as you can tell, still have some brain cloud, but getting into let's just say we're 86 away from 2K subscribers. Let's see if we can get there. We gained 10 since the last episode, so let's keep that momentum going. Like all Ohio sports teams have right now.
If you're sick of us saying these guys every episode talk about getting 2,000 subscribers, here's how you stop us from doing that. Tell 86 people to subscribe, and we get to 2,000. We thank you, and we shut up about it. We move on with our episode. That's how you guys stop talking about it. Let's get to 2,000, and then we move on. It's the best way to do it. We thought last week that the Guardians were going to have their coaching staff totally named. Chris Antonetti said, and to be fair, he didn't say publicly announced. He just said during their last media availability after the 40-man moves and non-tenders that they wanted to have the coaching staff finalized before they broke for Thanksgiving. It doesn't necessarily mean they were going to announce it before Thanksgiving, just that they'd be done. So maybe this week we hear some more news on the rest of the coaching staff filling out. But we know one that is back, and that is Kai Correa. Well, I should say we don't know for sure because the Guardians have not confirmed, but according to Robert Murray of FanSided, who's a pretty reliable source, Kai Correa is back with the Guardians in the coaching staff role. Undetermined what role that's going to be. Obviously, that's why the Guardians have to confirm it. But Kai Correa, maybe you're familiar with the name. He was previously Cleveland's infield coach in the Arizona Summer League, Rookie League, and he was a short season defensive coordinator. So he spent 2 years in Cleveland's system as a infield coach. And then in 2020, he left for the Giants to be a bench coach for Gabe Kapler and their infield instructor. And then he actually served as the Tigers. We'll talk about the Tigers later in the show, but he served as the Giants interim manager for the final 3 games last year after Gabe Kapler was fired. He went 1-2 for those who actually care about interim manager, interim coach records. We don't care about interim coach records here. Just going to be honest about that. But Kai Correa is back home. Sort of. He was here for 2 years, and I would assume he'll be the infield coach when he comes back, when they do announce this, and maybe he'll fill another role. But I do know that there are several players in the organization who really did enjoy the tutelage of Kai Correa. There's not a whole lot of background on him, honestly. Like, he was a college player at the University of Puget Sound in Seattle. Was a college infielder, never played.
Hotbed of talent.
Yeah, surprisingly, the Seattle area, baseball-wise, is very, very popular. Not necessarily in terms of players, but coaches. The only guy I could think of from that area, player-wise, is like Tarek Skubal. Is there anybody else I'm missing?
He was the University of Seattle. I mean, unless you want to count like University of Washington State guys, there doesn't seem to be.
Are they in Seattle? Are they near Seattle? Or
not really. They're like Pullman, which is
yeah.
No,
surprisingly, that area is hot for coaching. I don't know how much that has to do with Driveline or whatever, but yeah, that's where he went there. He was a coach there, and also coached at a couple of other different colleges. But Correa was well liked when he was here. I know from some players who had him as an infield instructor in the minors, and follows everybody on social media. He follows everybody who works in media wherever he goes. He did this for the Giants when he left, I guess, and then he just followed a bunch of people here in Cleveland when he came back, and that was his tip. So
I don't think I was one
Correa,
of them.
One of my accounts, one of my my writing site next year in Cleveland, he followed, and he already followed me before. But so if Kai Correa follows you as a reporter in another city, just assume he's coming to coach for your team. That's all I can really assume. So he'll fill one of the roles, obviously infield coach, but Jeff, there are a bunch of roles still open for Cleveland as of right now. Bench coach,
third base,
bullpen coach, and replay coordinator. I don't think that Correa will serve as the bench coach for a manager as inexperienced as Stephen Vogt. Like Gabe Kapler at least had some prior managerial experience, and the Giants filled out their staff in a very interesting way. So it's very hard for me to determine how things worked there. Obviously, it didn't work well because they all got let go. But I would imagine he won't be the bench coach. He'll be the infield coach, and maybe he'll be a base coach. But otherwise, he might just be the infield coach. Maybe.
Is it a little weird to you that they went out and kind of went out of their way to hire guys from a team that's not really been disappointing? Maybe is a way to describe it. That their focus was to go out and they had 2 coaches from an organization that has really regressed over the last 2 years, and now is a team that didn't necessarily clear house, but is a team that is just not lived up to expectations.
That's a fair question to ask. Yeah, I think you're right. Because I think the whole idea behind this, getting these hires right, is process over results, right? This is what we always say. It's a good result doesn't always mean you have a good process. But when it comes to coaching, if the result's not good, then oftentimes you point to coaches putting bad processes in place or something. That's how I'm trying to connect what you said in my head. But no, I think you have a great point there. Albernaz is obviously here because
he's a buddy.
He's a buddy of Vogt. I'm not saying it doesn't mean he doesn't deserve the job. I'm just saying I think they know it's going to be helpful for Vogt to have a familiar face on the staff, someone he can trust and rely on. Because every manager has this, right? I mean, Tito obviously had Brad Mills, and then he had DeMarlo Hale. Like everybody's got the right hand man, so I think it'll be helpful for him to have that. I'm sure there's other stuff Albernaz does well, and we're going to find out more, I'm sure. But yeah, it is interesting they picked it off. So I think they're just hoping that these guys fit a better process here. And we talked about how the Giants for a while were really good at getting the most out of these players, like who had Lamont Wade being a productive player, and Mike Yastrzemski and all these other guys that did produce there that were unexpected in San Francisco, whether that's on player development or coaching, but they did regress for sure. And that's why everyone got let go. And Correa too. I mean, it's somebody the team is familiar with, but do you think the Correa decision also kind of says that this was more of a front office? Like, I don't think he was there. I don't think he was part of the interview process for the manager's job. But
he was probably on like that list of 45 because it was just so dang big.
Because they are familiar with him. But do you think the front office probably wanted him back, and Vogt probably didn't know? And I'm sure Vogt signed off on it, or is going to sign off on it when it's official. But
yeah,
it kind of feels like the front office maybe.
And I mean, I assume he got along well with Albernaz, right? Like we assume that those two probably built a relationship.
Yeah. Somebody he could connect with there that may have said, yeah. But they already knew Correa from him being here, so that was probably not hard to confirm anything. So yeah, they still need a third base coach. Maybe Correa fills that role.
That's what I'm betting on.
Yeah, I'm thinking that might be it. Although that's kind of a demotion, but he's looking for work, so who knows? Bullpen coach and replay coordinator. Look, I have no idea what goes into hiring a replay coordinator. I don't. So I'm not even going to pretend to be like, hey, this guy could be a candidate. The only thing I'll say is a bench coach, I really don't know. I truly don't know. Bullpen coach, the only thing I'll continue to say is one of my friends brought this up to me the other day. I thought Brad Goldberg, who was an Ohio State transfer and graduate and a Beechwood native who has been a pitching coach in the organization for 2 years. I thought he'd be a good candidate, but then a friend reminded me that Owen Dew was the AAA pitching coach last year and has been here for a couple of years now and is pretty well regarded too. So I wouldn't be shocked if Owen Dew gets the bump from AAA. But as far as replay coordinator, your guess is anybody's guess is as good as mine.
It's just hard to listen. We know they're going to want someone who has experience for the bench coach. So it's really none of these guys outside of Correa's short run. So it's like who else gets promoted unless it's, unless they're not going to take one of, Dew or Goldberg and make him a replay coordinator. So I don't know. I feel like kind of this is where they're set at, and that the last coach they'll bring in, like I said, I think Correa takes the demotion to third. I think they'll bring in one more coach, and they're just kind of waiting to see who's available and trying to find, like you said, I think experience matters in this situation. And I feel like we're kind of at that point now. I think we might see some of that come up.
Bench coach, I think you do need experience. That's why I don't think Correa will be filling that role for a vote, just because, I don't know, the Giants were, like I said, the Giants built their staff in such a different way than that we've seen before. Maybe that's why it did or didn't work. I don't know. But I would think that given Vogt's inexperience, they'd want someone with experience. We do want you to experience this a good time on the show, and we're going to talk about whether or not the AL Central is getting better or worse. And we've got everyone's favorite time of year, Hall of Fame debates, which are always a thing that we're going to talk about today. Before we talk about the Hall of Fame, let's talk about how you can score with the NFL with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Browns next week at LA, back on the West Coast. It might be Joe Flacco versus Matt Stafford. So I'm going to suggest the moneyline bet on that game might not be your best decision. But hey, this also comes from a guy that took the Buckeyes with the points and the under in that game. So don't listen to me. And if you don't really love moneyline bets, which I frankly do not like the moneyline bets, I prefer the spread and I prefer the over and under. And you can do all that on FanDuel. Spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to kick off the NFL season and keep it kicking and win some money and don't make bad decisions like I did. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. Before we get into one team that is already active this MLB offseason before the winter meetings, let's talk about Locked On Sports Today. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts on all of our Locked On shows, plus our national shows covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today and on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And one of those things, Jeff, they're going to be covering over at Locked On MLB, our pal Sully, is going to be the Tigers signing Kenta Maeda to a 2-year, $12 million deal. They take him away from the Minnesota Twins and
interdivision fight.
Yeah. Let's I don't know if we're going to call it a fight. Look, Maeda wasn't bad last year. He's a league average starter. I mean, he had 1.5 wins above replacement, 104 innings. He has not ever thrown. So his first year in the majors in 2016, when he came over to sign with the Dodgers, he threw 175 innings. He's never come close to that since. He did have 153 in 2019.
He's never matched that 2020 year.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Nobody's matching that 2020 year. Nobody.
No, I know. But
what's funny about that is, so his F4 in 2020 was 2.1. He did have a 2.9 F4 in 2016 and 2.5 in 2018. So the fact that he came close to that year was pretty good. But he is about a guy you can get 120 innings or so out of and 20 plus starts. And he's a nice depth arm. I mean, his ERA is consistently in the low fours to basically the low fours, and he keeps his FIP in the fours. And he's a solid guy who he's not going to start. He's not going to make 32 starts, but he keeps shooting a lot of ball games, and he doesn't walk guys, which is good. This makes the Twins worse. Let's be honest here, because the Twins right now continue to tell everybody, or sources, are putting stories out there that Twins want to cut payroll, which means they weren't going to sign Maeda. They're not going to re-sign Sonny Gray. They are trying like hell right now to dump either Kyle Farmer, who they surprisingly tendered a contract to.
Why did they do that? Like that
yeah,
is
$6 million for a shortstop that they don't. I mean, I guess because it's their Carlos Correa insurance, but
that's too much. Like we talked about Ramon Laureano, but I guess it's like what 500,000 less. But Laureano is going to start every day. I mean, I don't know.
Is he? Yeah,
but I'm a long time Farmer doubter. So,
well, Correa may not start every day too. I mean, he had injury. He's obviously we know he has injury issues, but interesting that the Kyle Farmer thing. Does that keep and Christian Vasquez? We're going to talk about that. They're trying like hell to unload him to anybody who'll take him. That contract is worse than Miles Straw's.
I think it's that situation where, we sit back and we talk about the ridiculousness of like how bad Zunino was. It's like, that's why this team was still lucky, because you could be stuck with Vasquez. It's why they had to, agree to take back Segura to get from under Bell. Bad contracts are hard to get out from under. And right now, Vasquez might have cost them Maeda to a division rival. Now, we can argue if Detroit's bigger need is hitters, honestly, and this is a downgrade if they lose Eduardo, which I think they do. But the Twins are now down 2 starters. And, if you listen to Twins fans, who are mostly a good lot, they think Chris Paddock's going to come in and step right up for them. And it's like, that guy hasn't pitched in 2 years? You're counting on that. I mean, we complained about the Guardians' lack of depth. And again, you talked about this a few times. When I say lack of depth, it's proven major league pitching. Okay. They have guys who are fine at that 6, 7, 8 role. And guess what? You need about 8 arms. But I mean, the Twins, top of my head, Bailey Ober, Joe Ryan. I know I'm blanking already. That's what I said, top of my head. It's like Pablo Lopez. I forgot the ace, of course.
And they're talking about Louis Varland and, like you said, Paddock. There's Josh Winder, who people really like.
Couldn't say healthy, though.
Yeah, no, it's a mess. I mean, their pitching depth definitely is taking a hit. They're not, like I said, I don't think they're going to have the money to bring back Gray, and they obviously lost Maeda. And you're going to hope that this 5 they have, they might right now. I mean, I think they'll bring in somebody, but right now they kind of have 6 starters at best, and that's kind of what Cleveland has too, is 6 starters. So
I just wonder if they're gonna do they bring back Molly on a lesser deal, or like where are they going to find the arms? Like, this is a team in trouble. This is a team that has some needs.
They are. I mean, if they're not taking on any money and they're trying to pinch pennies where they can, everybody's going to be doing it. And I was going to ask you first, does this make the Tigers more of a threat because they have more depth? Now, you brought up, obviously, the smart point that this means nothing if they lose Eduardo Rodriguez because he was their best starter. Although Drake Scuba was pretty darn good when he came back last year. So
and he was really good before that. And they should get Casey Mize back this year as well, right?
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to be. I mean, Matt Manning, I think, has never quite panned out. I like Reese Olson. I'll say this. The Tigers have some interesting young arms. Wilmer Flores, to me, is going to be, it looks like a good arm. I've long been a fan of Keeter Montero, even though he's kind of undersized. I think they have some interesting pitchers. I'm just looking at their lineup on paper here, and I think after like 5 or 6, it's pretty bad. I think it's pretty bad. Zach McKinstry is like, okay. They're sad with that Javi Baez contract. Like, their bottom 3 of their order is devastatingly bad. You have McKinstry, who, he had an okay year last year. I wouldn't say it was great. It was pretty bad, actually. Baez stinks. Jake Rogers is Austin Hedges-ish.
He's better than Austin Hedges. He had a really good year last year.
286. He had 286 OVP last year and a 444 slug. Like, he's Austin Hedges before the bottom fell out on Austin Hedges. Like,
yeah, but I mean, he's close to a league average bat with plus defense. So it's like he has. I would still. I mean, Rogers to Hedges. Yeah, I mean, Rogers to Hedges, the offensive. I mean, Hedges was literally the worst hitter in baseball. Rogers is double-digit home run guy pretty consistently. So, in fairness, they have that. Torkelson was starting to come around. Kerry Carpenter is a revelation for them. It was a late-round pick. And the outfield's kind of set. The infield is.
I think that the AL Central is going to be worse next year. That's shocking to say.
100%.
The Twins won this division with 87 wins and nobody else finished above 500. Like, it would not shock me if next year it takes 84 wins to win this division. It stinks. If the Twins are cutting payroll, they can't add more talent to that team. They're losing talent. The Tigers are going to be more dangerous, but they only won 78 games last year, and they still have questions. Obviously, Cleveland's got a ton of questions. The White Sox are looking like they're going to tear everything down for the most part because they're going to trade Cease. They're talking about trading Eloy Jimenez, and the Royals are on year 12 of a 20-year rebuild, so nobody knows what they're going. 84 wins might win the division next year. It looks like it's going to be even uglier because no one's going to be spending money this offseason because of all the TV money and owners, crying poor.
Yeah, it feels like.
What fun is this going to be this winter?
It's going to be the most fun ever. It does feel like everyone in this division is cutting payroll, cutting back.
What you can root for? You can root for other teams to be so desperate to cut payroll. Not that Cleveland's going to benefit, but that they might be more interested in Cleveland's prospects and making a deal now because they're not trying to sign major league talent. So maybe they're more interested in a Tyler Freeman or a Brian Rocchio or
the problem right now is like that effect. Feels like teams want
outfielders. Everybody wants outfielders. Everybody.
And can we state again? We get this comment every 2 days. Go listen to former episodes. There were literally less than 20 right-handed outfielders. There was I think 15 right-handed outfielders last year who had 20 plus home runs. They don't exist. Everyone wants us to add 2. It's like, guess what? the ones that are available, yes. There is Teoscar Hernandez, who's going to cost a lot of money still. And there is Hunter Renfroe and Jose Soler, neither of which can play outfield. So they're both DHs masquerading. Sure. So, it keeps coming up, but I'm just going to keep saying, I appreciate the thought, but it's not going to happen.
Everybody wants that.
The Yankees want to add 2 outfielders. The Braves might be looking to add outfielders. There's just not and no, Cleveland is not going to trade for Marcell Ozuna, even if the Braves take some of that contract.
Ooh, all right. Well, we think Marcell Ozuna is not a future Hall of Famer. It's everybody's favorite time of year. It is Hall of Fame debate season. There are some ex-Cleveland players on the 2024 Hall of Fame ballot. We're going to entertain debating their careers. You can't tell that we're so excited about it. Please stick around for this debate. We have more than that coming. All right, Jeff, it's everybody's favorite time of year. You know how you feel about spring training baseball and the WBC?
Yes.
In the All-Star game, I feel this way about the Hall of Fame because even though I was extremely excited because I was looking forward to this for a long time, I took it wasn't supposed to be a solo vacation, but it ended up being a solo vacation. I did go to Cooperstown for Jim Thomey's induction in 2018 by myself, but that was an experience of a lifetime that I will never forget. But on the whole, Hall of Fame season to me is just I dread the debate every year because it's so annoying and it's so filled with people who probably don't deserve to have votes. And every year you get these people who vote or they abstain from voting. They say they're abstaining from voting because of steroids or whatever. And they send in a blank ballot because they're too dumb to realize that's not abstaining. And there's one of them who is a Cleveland voter who keeps doing this, by the way.
It's the same as voting, is sending in a blank one. I just want to make one final comment. I know you said that Marcell Ozuna is not a Hall of Famer. I'm not arguing with you, but I will say in recent memories that trade for him is looking like one of the all-time. That's in the that is a trade that is in that kind of highest tier of baseball trades, the Marcell Ozuna trade, the Bartolo Colon trade.
That's a Hall of Fame trade. You're right. That is look, Bartolo had a great career. Let's be honest. He had a total of 46 Baseball Reference WAR. That's pretty good. He pitched for how many times? He pitched 21 years. Good for Bartolo Colon. This is his first year on the ballot. I think he's going to drop off the ballot after the first year, but you're right. I think for Cleveland, the most significant thing that ever happened for him is the Grady Sizemore deal, who also would have been a Hall of Famer too.
And Brandon Phillips.
How about this? Brandon Phillips and Bartolo Colon are both on the ballot for the first time this year. Bartolo Colon was traded for Brandon Phillips. They're on the ballot for the first time each this year, and Colon ended up playing as long as Phillips did. Phillips played for 17 years. yeah, Cologne trade for Brandon Phillips and they end up on the ballot. I wonder how often that happens. That's wild.
I can't think that is a very common occurrence.
And hey, Bartolo's still pitching in that United Baseball League in Saudi Arabia. He did some PFP. Was throwing pretty good over there. Maybe he can come back to be Cleveland's minor league depth starter at some point this year. Manny Ramirez, this is his 8th year on the ballot. 33% of the votes last year. He needed, what, 70% to get in? Is that right?
I am not sure.
No, I think it's more because Todd Helton got
75.
They got 75 because Todd Helton got 72
right?
last year and he didn't get in. So I don't think Manny's getting in. Omar is on his 7th year. He got less than 20. He's not getting in. Victor Martinez on the ballot for the first time this year. That was not a trade that worked out all that great for Cleveland. And if anything, I think that trade, Justin Masterson was fine. And Victor Martinez had a nice career too. I enjoyed watching him when he played here. He was one of the best hitting catchers, one of the best hitters that Cleveland's had in the last 30 years. But that deal, Masterson didn't do a whole lot. And the rest of that deal did not work out well either. But the negative vibes that trade gave off, I think, were so damaging for Cleveland and the city. Whatever. Now, no matter how good Justin Masterson was, he was the only thing that they got from that trade, basically. But the feelings that trade created in Cleveland.
Yeah, but I mean,
people still
he was going to walk.
Like
he was going to walk.
But when they traded him, he had, I think, 2 years left.
And they were a mess. And I mean, do you really want to pull a Whit Merrifield situation? I don't have a problem with those. It's like, if you are a rebuilding crap team, you should trade your assets. They really like Justin Masterson. They ended up being worth it? No. He was solid, but he was nothing to write home about. And then
he was
Nick Hagedorn.
Yeah,
Nick Hagedorn was an interesting player, but it was a year and a half left, which was their MO. And I don't have a problem with making that trade. I know he says he didn't want to leave, but he also wasn't gonna. Gosh, it's hard to believe they only got. I mean, how that next contract with the Tigers was 4 years, around $50 million, which they weren't going to give him. And like I said, that was a bad era. And they had Carlos Santana waiting in the wings. And I don't know. I can't fault them. I can fault the results that led them to thinking Masterson and Hagedorn were going to work. But this is the era of Nick Hagedorn, Jason Knapp, the failed centerpieces of trades.
Yeah, talk about bad process, right? That was a pretty bad era for process. I don't know. The Cliff Lee thing, obviously, it was a lot of bad vibes from that trade too, because I think he was even further from free agency, but again, part of their MO back then and still sort of now. But yeah, I just remember all the bad emotions that came from that trade, and people still talk about it today. And that one seemed to really sting people, because I think it probably stung more because that team that Victor was on just never accomplished much. I mean, they made it to the ALCS in 2007 and nothing else.
Yeah, and that might have been actually their best chance to win a World Series. It's like, were they up 3-1? Or is it 2-1?
They had Colorado waiting for them.
Yeah. In Colorado, just waiting there. And that was unfortunate. That was the beginning of Fausto Carmona, a.k.a. Roberto Hernandez's collapse. After he was nails in the Midge game, he was never the same pitcher after that year and that season. And it was everyone was bad in the postseason. Sabathia couldn't get the final win. And there's a lot of, that's a sad one for me. And then, Grady Sizemore essentially goes down for the rest of his career after that. And also the weird Jake Westbrook injury. Though I know, but it's like all those things kind of happened in a weird little 3 to 4 year cluster.
Yeah, I mean, the 08 team collapsed, which led to these trades. The 06 team just was not as good, and the 05 team was a good chance to win the World Series too, and they just choked at the end of that season, unfortunately. Ozzie Guillen was right. So I don't think Victor Martinez is going to be a Hall of Famer either. He had a nice career, but most of it was at first baseman DH, and there's no defensive value there. 815 career OPS, 118 OPS plus. Nice career. Brandon Phillips.
No.
Was an Indian for a brief short amount of time, played a good long career, and Cleveland screwed that one up pretty badly because they didn't have a second baseman until Jason Kipnis came along, and
but they got Jeff Stevens.
That decision really
who allowed
they had Ronnie Belliard.
Mark DeRosa.
They had Ronnie Belliard. Yeah, Mark DeRosa was also not the answer. No, they had Ronnie Belliard after Brandon Phillips. I apologize. They had Brandon, who was very fun to watch, but really they didn't have anybody consistent until Jason Kipnis. And I still go back to the Brandon Phillips trade as being an erase issue. I don't know. I can't. It's hard for me to get past. I don't know for sure, but
well,
it's hard to get past.
It was a situation where he didn't get along with management, right? Like, wasn't the current management at the time was an issue?
Happen. So no ex-Indians going to the Hall of Fame this winter. I think CC Sabathia's on the ballot next year, but he will go in as a Yankee. But good luck to him. Speaking of next, Jeff, we're about out of here today. Thanks for everybody coming back after the Thanksgiving break. Hope you all had a nice, healthy, safe travels to see family and eat some food and whatnot. But busy week for us. So Friday, we're going to do a mailbag. Friday is the last day before the winter meetings start next week. So lots to talk about. So get us some questions for Friday's mailbag. We'll talk about the winter meetings coming up next week, the Rule 5 draft. We've got more positional previews coming up this week. We'll talk about making trades with every other team in baseball, see where Guardians can match up. And we'll talk about starting pitching depth again for the 1,000th time, because that's what we do.
Thank you all for listening, reading and reviewing, doing your part, downloading it helps, not hurts. Thank you. Make sure you're subscribed, tell a friend, and go Guardians.